This is using premium data for analysts, and I'm Lynn Langit. So hopefully you're in the session you intended to be. So I'm assuming a lot of you guys have heard from me before because I present often on technologies. In fact, I used to do that full-time for Microsoft for 4 years. I was an FTE for 4 years in 2007 till 2011. I traveled the world, and I have still a MSDN blog with SQL Server topics that people still look at, and it amazes me. I am now an independent contractor, and I do big data and cloud architecture, and I'm focusing a lot on strategic use of big data at the C-level with various verticals. I'm specializing in education, healthcare, manufacturing, and I've done some government. I live in Southern California, and I tend to work up and down the West Coast. In addition to that, I continue to do public education work for which I've been recognized by all the major vendors. I have a Microsoft MVP for SQL Server. I was the first Google GDE, which is the Google MVP program for cloud. And I have an Amazon Community Hero designation. So I uniquely have all three. I think I'm actually the only person in the world that has that, which the benefit to you guys is it makes me broader than many presenters that you might hear at a conference that's focused on one set of technologies. So one of the things that you'll hear in my session is you'll hear quite a lot about integration with Microsoft products because that's what I use and that's what I would expect you would be interested in. But you'll also hear going beyond the world of Microsoft products, data sets, and integrations. I also do courses. I've done courses for Pluralsight on the Google Cloud. I'm doing courses now for lynda.com on, I have a Hadoop course. I have a Kodu Kids course. I have a NoSQL course just coming out, which might be interesting for you guys. It's publishing this month, NoSQL survey. And then I'm doing some more courses on cloud coming up. So I publish often. Oh, also I have something I just published because I was working for GigaOM on SlideShare. It's on machine learning. So I've talked to a lot of people here who are interested in machine learning. So it's a survey of machine learning because I was on the beta programs for both Microsoft and Amazon for a while. So it meant as an introduction for analysts. So that might be interesting. It's on SlideShare. It's called Practical Machine Learning. So to that end, you can, I always joke if you can't find me, you're not looking because I'm very available. I spend too much time on Twitter. And I also have over 150 different screencasts on YouTube that are technical data screencasts that a lot of people have found interesting. In addition to that, I'm the co-founder of a nonprofit to address this problem of educating children in computational thinking. Our primary output is a set of open source courseware to be the bridge in the Java language to get middle school students engaged and interested in joining the AP Java classes that we do have available. Also, we launched here at this conference, a previous talk, we are starting work in IoT data science at our test site in North San Diego. And my program director, who's also here, Jessica Ellis, gave her first ever talk just right before me, where she bravely demonstrated IoT devices to her audience and had mixed success on her demos, but that's the way it goes. So anyway, so to our talk, premium data for business analysts. So I wanted to tell this talk via a story because I thought that would be more fun and interesting. And I also think it makes the point about premium data and more data in general as a strategic advantage. So here we have a fish cart selling oysters. And no, it's not that they don't know how to spell. It's a foreign country. And so the lens through which I wanted to tell the story of premium data was the business case of this oyster cart. Why would a vendor, really is the question, that has this simple business of just selling, fresh oysters in their city possibly need more data? And if they do, how would they get it? How would they find it? How would it add business value? So I thought if I took sort of the most extreme case, because I highly doubt that any of you, not that it's a bad living, but I highly doubt that any of you here are oyster cart fish sellers. You're probably selling things of a bit higher, base cost. So in any case, that's the question. And you have to always start with that for wherever your domain is. If you're in healthcare or if you're in manufacturing, you have to start with what is the business reason? What is the business situation we're trying to address with more data? Not what data is out there that we can buy. Or increasingly, what you're going to find, you guys, is what is the business data that you are being solicited to buy? Because this whole category of business data or premium data is becoming a category that will be increasingly marketed to enterprise. And you guys in the audience are going to be the people who are going to be asked to say, by your company, should we buy this data or not? So I'm going to try through this story to try to help you to answer this question. So we start with the oyster cart. So why do we need or want more data? We know when we sell our fish. We know when we're supposed to be there because we collect when we sell and we see which hours are the busiest. What possible business question do we not know the information about that we would look for some more data, possibly some premium data? Well, let's really drill into this idea of business questions. Just in general, I've been working in the big data space for, I don't know, my whole career. I did cubes and stuff like that 10 years ago. And these data projects, as we all know, have a very high failure rate because they can sometimes be driven by technologies and love of technologies rather than business value. And so they can then not produce business value or not be usable. You guys might have seen this or suffered from this as analysts. You were presented with something that the IT department worked really hard on that had absolutely no value to you whatsoever. So as with any situation, but even more so with premium data, because you're buying it, you need to tie it to business questions. So in the case of this cart, here's just some questions. Where should I put my cart? When should my cart be open? Have you ever gone, you guys are all travel, you ever gone to a location, a small airport, and the coffee shop's not open, and there's a conference? Is that not the most frustrating thing? You just feel like, what is wrong with this coffee shop? They could make so much money if they'd just be open, right? Similar thinking on the cart here. What types of food are in season? Perhaps the cart could differentiate if they had competition, if they could have seasonal, snacks or fruits or vegetables or whatever. Where can I buy the best quality? Do I just buy from the same supplier all the time? Or are my customers becoming more sophisticated and using a Yelp to find the best oyster supplier and then asking me, do I get my oysters from that supplier? Do I need to know that information now? Because my consumers are different now. Where's competition going to pop up? What are the average prices near to me? What are the top suppliers? And you can go on and on and on. This is the starting point for really any data project, but really more importantly, more so for premium data. How can I make more money? That's what it comes down to. How can I make more money? Well, if you don't read that language, this cart's in Amsterdam. And yes, I'm showing you my vacation photos, but I'm the presenter, so I can, and I own them, so I don't have to put all the credit and all that kind of stuff. So if you think about Amsterdam, if you've ever been there, and the reason I went was because of the cultural attractions. It's a great museum city. So if I were owning an oyster cart in Amsterdam, I would want to get some information about the museums because I know that museums drive the traffic to the city, right? When museums have a major exhibit. So one of my first tips after thinking about the business questions, that's the first tip. I guess the second tip would be, is there any data that I can get for free before I start buying data? And that's something that the premium data vendors aren't either talking about enough or don't talk about at all. So it's really very important because we all are here because we have too much data to deal with already. So kind of the thought of getting more data has to be a really compelling reason. And before we pay to get more data, we have to figure out what kind of data would we want to buy. And so a great way to do that is to use free data. So to that end, when I have worked with customers to integrate premium data, I'm insistent that they do not just go and buy data. That I have never had that work out well. And I've been doing a lot of these. I'm actually an MVP from Dun & Bradstreet, which is the premier provider. I was the first one. I helped make their program. I'm an MVP for Melissa Data. I'm working in the space quite actively. And I have seen in every customer who goes directly to the premium data, they end up buying the data and they do not get business value. Because you guys, the analysts, are already overwhelmed with your current data. And then the C-level comes in and says, oh, I'm just going to give you this data, and then it's going to be magical, and it's always a data quality issue, right? and I'm buying this data for you, and now our data should be clean. And then really your life just becomes worse because you don't know how to deal with this data, you're not used to the tools, you're not used to the formats, and you get all this pressure to get business value immediately. So a huge tip I have for you guys is start on your own with free data because you get used to the formats, you get used to the tools, you get used to what's out there because the premium data is coming in the format of the web. It is not coming in the format of, oh, here's a table in your SQL Server. It's not. It's coming in JSON data. It's coming in XML data. It's coming in REST calls. It's coming in data types and tools that are mostly new for people who work in the Microsoft ecosystem. So how do you do that? Okay, let's go back to our scenario. We got the Oyster cart. Let's talk about museums. So we all know things like census data for the US, but I purposely picked a non-US example just to get us thinking a little bit more. So you want to start with open data. So for wherever you live, another tip I have for you is to investigate what open data is available. Now, I'm assuming that, and I guess not everybody here is US, because I've talked to some people non-US, but most of the people here are US. I live in Southern California, and so I am really working a lot with the city data, city and county data, and they're following along the example of New York. New York has been the big US city that has had this open data movement, where they're open sourcing, making available all of their city data. Most of us are used to like federal data, like census and all that, which you could go to. But another tip I'll give to you is get county or city data because it's richer and more interesting and often has more business value. In this particular case, it certainly would, right? Because we want data around the city of Amsterdam, right? So this is the hard part. You know how I said data looks different? Okay, does anybody know what this is? I'll give you extra points if you do. You probably don't. This is a visualization of DBpedia. DBpedia is an attempt to put a schema on Wikipedia so that it can be queried. And this, I kind of did this to shock you because it kind of gets you thinking, right? This is graph data. This is graph data. So what is graph data if you've never seen it before? I call it noun-verb. You have the entities stored in the database, but you also have the relationships. So Lynn, hamburger, Lynn eats hamburger. Lynn, vodka, Lynn drinks too much vodka. But anyway, like that. So you have literally the verb is stored. So when you do a query, you don't do a SQL query. You do a query that selects the noun verbs. Again, it kind of, I see all you guys going, what? And that's exactly the point. Because if you got this kind of data premium, you would have no idea how to use it, right? Right. So you want to start with open data, free data. Not that all of it looks like this. Now, the challenge with this, and I know you guys are hands-on people, so you're probably like, well, how do you query this? So I thought, okay, I'll just show you because, you want to know. So here's about DBpedia. And basically, it talks about how it puts the syntax on top. This is a great data set for analysts to work with because as in the past, you worked with census data. Everybody was expected, oh, you should know the census data. DBpedia is becoming the new hello world of open data. So going in, working with DBpedia is a great, great thing. It's not easy, though, because it's actually stored in this format. I know you're so happy right now because you're seeing the word select. It's like something familiar, yay. But it works in this format of a triple store. It's RDF, which is subject, predicate, object in this case. So if I run a query through this very, webby query interface, I'll get a result, but what am I getting, right? I'm just getting a list of schemas, actually. So again, I'm doing this on purpose to show you, because you hear a lot of talk about Hadoop, NoSQL, different data types. I want to just put it in front of you. I want to show you some of these different data types and not just talk about all these MongoDBs and all these databases. And this is very germane to what we're talking about with the Oyster cart because, as we'll see in a minute, data from Amsterdam museums comes in the format of RDF. It comes in that format, linked open data. So you might say, well, oh, that DBpedia thing looks horrible. Is there any place I can go that kind of, helps me, guides me through? And I pulled up Data Hub here just to show you. So I can go to Data Hub, and I actually have a list of all the public data sets. This is my blog. So this is just a general place you can get started here, lynnlangit.com, public-datasets, and here's a list if I intrigue you to get started, in my talk today. So I go to Data Hub, and inside Data Hub, if I say museum, because I want to find out about museum data, and search, and there I can see museums. Now, I'll just take Italian just I know it's not in Italy, but just to show you there. And so what it's going to give you is something called a Sparkle endpoint. And see, there's that DBpedia representation there. So when you're working with this open data, one of the biggest challenges is these formats. And what I have found as my work as a data architect is by doing sort of fun projects or nonprofit projects, it helps me when I go to my enterprise customers when they encounter data like this because, you don't have any tools for it. So one of the great things, and now I'm going to come back into something very familiar to you guys, probably, everybody uses Excel, is that Microsoft is doing some really good work around making this type of data usable. And I want to kind of go way out there to the websites and the DBpedias, but then I also want to come back into the familiar tools and let you see kind of what's happening, at least in the Microsoft world, of trying to bring them together. So I think that's important for you guys. And I would really recommend that you try to use these tools first when they work. So I'm assuming at this point in the conference that everybody has seen or is already using Power Query. If you're not, it's worth the price of admission just to come to this talk. It's a free add-in for Excel, and it allows you to integrate data from many different sources, including open and premium data, okay? So if you have no idea what you're looking for, one of the coolest things, and I never see people use this, so I wanted to show you guys, is there's a search capability in here, and I pre-staged it because I wanted to check, and I just typed in Amsterdam museums. And what it did is it gives me a list of the open data, and check this out. I mean, this is just list of most visited museums. Perfect. That is going to be really useful for me. And I can go ahead, I can load that, and then I can start working with it in Excel. So one of my tips about working with open data is to see if you can pull it in through either a search or an endpoint. Now, Sparkle endpoints aren't yet supported in Power Query. And I don't know if they ever will be, but it's feedback I've given to the team that I think that would be useful. This data set's relatively small, and maybe you would just get started with this. But maybe what you would do in terms of premium data is you would figure out which museums you want to purchase premium information from the museum about, more drill down about what's going on at that museum. And you might say, what? Purchase data from the museum? That's right. These arts institutions are starting to figure out the data is an asset and starting to make that data available for sale. What kind of data? Maybe they're best patrons, maybe they're, things that would be really interesting if you were running a business of, say, oyster carts across Amsterdam. I'm thinking now you're a mogul and you have 50 oyster carts across Amsterdam, Very, very interesting. There's also sites like Amsterdam Open Data. So again, you want to go to your particular city or your county and see what is available, because those sites will provide tools for querying sometimes, because the raw query tools really are not that great. Another way to work with free data before you move into premium data is to leverage the cloud. I am all about the cloud for data experiments. Again, something that I'm hearing and talking to the attendees is you're either not having time or being restricted. Every analyst needs to have some cloud credits. If you have an MSDN account, you may not know you have Azure credits. You should activate them. You have, I think, a couple hundred hours a month for free. And if you don't have an MSDN account, go ask your developer friend who's not using it. Amazon has a big free tier, and Google is just incredibly cheap. So I'll just show you some of the free data sets that you could use on the public clouds. And why you would want to do that, let's go here, is let's say you wanted to do some sort of experiment around, oh, I don't know, genomics, like my customer in North San Diego that was doing a mashup of human genome data with their results of their cancer research. Well, they didn't want to spin up new servers and allocate the on-prem resources. They wanted to run this experiment in a cloud. And it was just really convenient that Amazon has this data set, which is basically a drive, so like a D drive. You just turn on a virtual machine in the Amazon cloud, and then you take this ID, and then you have the human genome that you can do calculation against. Yeah, this is the new world of trying things out. It's really, really interesting. And just in case you've never seen it, since we have a minute or two, because I know a lot of the audience here hasn't seen the Amazon cloud. This is like an Azure virtual machine. I just happen to use Amazon because they have this thing called spot pricing, where you can bid on compute, and if it's not being used, you can get it super cheap. So like if it would cost $50 an hour, you can bid 10 cents. And then, so you're going to use the EC2 instance, and then inside of here, you're going to just get a new instance, and if you're comfortable with Windows, you're going to get a Windows instance. And notice it's free tier eligible, so if you want to be really cheap, you can get a little teeny tiny one like that. But what I usually do is I go for these. I go for like the compute optimized, go for the real big one. And then I'm going to configure the details, and then I say like where I want it and stuff like that. And then here's the point, add storage. So you add a storage volume, and, oops, I have the wrong thing there. Sorry, let me go back here. I need this guy. I just need this ID. And then when I have this ID, instead of a blank volume, I think, as long as it finds it, well, maybe I'll go to the other genomic project. It will then just add a volume with that genomic information. And they also have census information, and they have satellite images. I had one guy in my pre-con, oh, I don't know what's wrong with their thing. I'll do the one that I did on the pre-con, which was satellite images. Climate data. I'll just pick one, because I want you to see how it looks when it comes up. And you have the ID. Sorry, guys. Just looking for the ID. Maybe this one. Nope. Funny, the one that I picked in the pre-con worked just fine. There, okay, let me try that one. Oh, that's only loaded in the Asia Pacific region. How about Enron email information? That's grim. Did you see that, by the way, the Sony thing? That they had a browser for the Sony email? Wow, that freaked me out, man. You could like just look up people's email addresses and what they said about the movies. There, okay, so I'm redeemed. They need to update their thing. So you see how it says this is a genome drive, basically? So then what would happen is you turn on this virtual machine, and your D drive would be the genomic information. And then you could, put your data and calculate against it. It's like a kind of a good tip for doing calculations with public data. Because then when you're done, you just throw it away. You can output the results into S3 or whatever you want to do. So, all right. But I said we wanted to get to premium data. So the going to public data has a couple tips in that it lets you work with these new data formats, it lets you work with new tools, it lets you figure out what data you want. But let me, again, bring it down to stuff that you guys it's probably from a more practical point. Let's say for our oyster vendor, they had customer list. You guys all have this. Customer list, and you have to deal with data quality, right? Every single one of you. So how is there data that you can buy that can help you with these data and algorithms that can help you with these data quality issues? And basically all these are the major vendors. All these and more have matching, address validation, IP validation, email validation. So another takeaway for you guys is if you're doing manual cleaning of customer information, you should stop that because it's expensive, it's not as accurate as machine cleaning, and you should figure out which service you want to use. The ones that I use are either Melissa or Dun & Bradstreet. So Melissa I use for the quick and dirty. So I'll show you that one first. And I don't think Melissa has foreign, so I wouldn't use them in this case because Dun & Bradstreet is global and Melissa is foreign. So, I'm sorry, the other way. So Melissa Data is actually based in SoCal, and their very first thing here is data quality. So they have a very good try before you buy. So that's another tip, is you also want to try this out before you actually go and buy it. But it's very obvious what their stuff does. Clean address, clean the address right here, right? If you need to geocode, which is translate into lat long so you can map, use some of the mapping visualization tools, right? If you need to find out email information, and you can try a demo, and you can put in an email address and see if it's a real email address. And there it tells me information about my email address. So to me, Melissa Data is sort of like, should be in every analyst toolkit because it's quick, it's easy, it's competitively priced for what you get, and there should be no more manual cleaning of this kind of stuff. Now you might say, well, this is great, you just showed me a website. How do you really work with this? Well, one of the awesome things about all these commercial vendors is they're starting to integrate, and they're really starting to integrate mostly with Microsoft. So I'm assuming most of the people in here are using Microsoft tools such as SQL Server and SSIS and things like that. So you can see that you have integration in Melissa, for example, with right inside of Excel. You can get these services. Now, I don't tend to use Melissa inside of Excel. I usually use it in SSIS. If you're a developer, you can write against the endpoint. And then there's a small service that really didn't catch on, but it's actually pretty good, called Data Quality Services in SQL Server that it integrates with as well. So just because, I will show you kind of what this looks like. I don't really have a demo of it, but yeah, can you see right there? See how that's and I know not everybody here is SSIS, but this is a extract, transform, and load for SQL Server where you programmatically create a data flow. And what Melissa has, and it's a little bit hard to see right here, I'll make it bigger, is they have, do you see that contact verify? They basically, that little test harness that I showed you, they have that as a component for SSIS. So you can just buy the service and then you can pay by the record, which I've seen a lot of Microsoft customers be really happy with. And they were out first with this. Now, to be inclusive, and to be transparent, I actually worked with Dun & Bradstreet as a contract PM, and I helped them make their SSIS component. So they have one as well. It's not as complete, and it doesn't include all services. But a lot of people really like to take a look at that. Now, that being said, you really want to pay attention to your pricing on your premium data. Most of them have this freemium model where you can try it out, and you try out fake data or a subset of data or a limited time period. You need to ask specifically your vendor about what they're giving you for freemium. I've had a lot of analysts be confused that the data is obfuscated and think that the data quality of the premium data was really bad because they didn't read the fine print to see that the free data was actually scrambled on purpose. Do you know what I mean? And then pure premium, the biggest tip that I would tell you is work your vendors hard. This is a new space, and they have published prices, but they are in heavy competition with one another. So you can go to the vendor and say, hey, I'm big company X, and I'm considering you or other vendor. Can you give me a price deal? And they will. They will. So you can really push on pricing. You want to ask them, how is your pricing? Is it pay for the data? Pay for the algorithm? Do you have partner rates? Do you have volume discounts? You want to really understand the pricing. Is it row by row? Is it batches? Do I get charged for inputs where I didn't put in the right parameters, so there's a failure? Like, ask all these detailed questions so you can know what you're buying. Do you know what I mean? All right. Try before you buy. Those are skates, by the way. Can you pronounce that? I can't. All right. So Microsoft has taken this really interesting approach, and they kind of were too ahead of their time, I think, because it didn't really catch on yet, but I think it will. they actually have a website where they offer premium data. Like Amazon just has some free data sets, Google has the Data Explorer, but Microsoft has this website where there's some free, but mostly premium. And it's interesting because, again, with the D&B thing, I've been working with these guys for a while, like 2 years, and now they're moving some of this over to the Azure portal, and it's kind of unclear as to whether they're going to have these 2 sites or, whatever. But most of the vendors are over here right now. Now, why this is interesting is this is a true data marketplace that is hosted by Microsoft, but doesn't only have Microsoft data. So it's probably easiest if I just demo it to you. It's one of the most extensive ones, though, which makes it really interesting. I'll actually go to the top level here. So Azure Data Market is what it's called. There's a couple things that are really interesting about this. You can try data, you can buy data, you can also sell data here. So I've worked with some clients that actually are trying to develop enriched data for resale, data as an asset. For example, I have a client that does facilities management, and with all this IoT sensor stuff, they're partnering with their control manufacturers like Johnson Controls and Nest and things like that, and they're developing data models and data sets that are anonymized, but yet still have value for maybe other device manufacturers, other people who work with that information around buildings, and then try and get it for sale here. Which is, again, I think this is going to fall into you guys' world, that as this becomes more of a thing, companies are going to say to you guys as the analysts, how can we enrich our data for resale? So one of the, again, tips that I have for you is to go out to the marketplace and take a look and see what's there. I mean, the most common use case is data for cleaning and data for data quality. But like in terms of data as a strategic asset, that's really kind of the cutting edge. So in any case, so what do we have here? First of all, we can look at the free data sets. And I already signed in with my Windows Live account. You have to sign in. And you can see one of the things, too, that Microsoft has done is interesting is they integrated with Azure Machine Learning. So you can actually put an Azure Machine Learning endpoint on the marketplace, which is because it's a data model, right? So again, this is really interesting stuff. So here's a free data set from Dun & Bradstreet. It's a demonstration data set. It's a woman-owned retail business located in Seattle. Now, a difference from, and I just happen to know Melissa and D&B, is Melissa is, very basic information. What is the address? What is the email address? What's the type of email address? Is it a valid email address? What's the IP address? D&B is all that, and in the case, and then, for example, in this case, what is it woman-owned? Is it minority-owned? Is it green? Is it green certified? What is the sales volume? What is the PAYDEX score? Do they pay their bills on time? What are the 5 executives of the company, their names, their phone numbers, their addresses? So the way I look at these two, and again, this is kind of just a highlight from all the premium data, is Melissa's for the sort of down and dirty, quick data cleaning jobs, and D&B is for like enriching the customer list for marketing campaigns, where you really, you want to have your spend get a result, basically. So, and that's a little bit of an oversimplification. But as far as mechanics and what you can do in the site, you can see inside of here, it tells you like how much you click the button to sign up, it's free. And then down at the bottom here, you have this explore this data set, integrate with Power Pivot, and then integrate with Visual Studio. And they have this little browser thing in here where you can try before you buy. And you can see you've got a URL for the current query here. And inside of here, you can see that we've got DUNS numbers, which is another big thing about D&B's particular offer, because they have these basically social security numbers for businesses, globally unique identifiers. And this is one of their key value props, because you can do things like deduplicate based on DUNS numbers and fuzzy matching and that kind of stuff. So anyway, inside of here, I could do a query, and this is just a little browse thing, and I'll just copy and see if this actually works. Let me go out of here, go here, and copy the, oops, because you have to have a valid one. And C, and B, and filter. There, okay. So, and you can see that's the actual URI of the query right there. Now, what's interesting is you can download this into Excel. You can work with Power Pivot or the different versions of Power Pivot. Another thing I'll tell you right here is you need your account key to be able to do this stuff. But as with some of the other things I showed, you can also just work with this directly in Power Query, which is where I prefer to work with it. So if you go into Power Query and I make a new sheet, let me make this bigger so you guys can see it. And then I say, from Azure, in addition to, basically cloud storage, like if you just put some files up there they want to look at, you can go into the Azure Marketplace. So I prefer this interface to working in the Azure Marketplace. But I think it's good to start in the Azure Marketplace because then you kind of see what's out there. So you go to the Azure Marketplace, and then it's going to show you, and these look like RSS feeds because that's basically what they are, all of your various feeds that you're subscribed to. Now, one of the things that's tricky about this is I wish they would have green for the ones that you're paying for. Because it's not obvious in looking at this, when you click one of them, which one you're going to get billed for here. Now, I happen to be an MVP of everything. I happen to get everything free, so I usually don't have to worry about this. But I've seen this be problematic for customers. So that's just a little warning thing right here. So if I go inside of here and I go to the, I'll just do a business verification and see what we got. Well, actually, I want to show you contrast here. And I'm thinking that you guys are pretty sophisticated in Power Query, so if going beyond what you're comfortable, ask me a question. So you can see here's the DNB data sandbox, and I have 10 different feeds, and they're little squares. So these are basically, I'm going to get the entire data set back. They're tables, is really what it is, or CSV files. This is an f of x. I'm going to have to pass parameters in, and I'm going to get the number of records that match. Remember how I said you have to be really careful what you're paying for? This one, you're going to be charged, in this case, for all the records. This one, you're going to be charged for 1 record or 2 records or whatever you're looking for, okay? So I'll just show you. You can see this will come down, and then it loads, right? And I could load it into my workbook or into a Power Pivot model. So that's fabulous for cleaning up. You can just pull this business data down and then join it to your data and see where the mismatches are, right? Super cool. Over here, if you want to pay, what we've got is we've got a function. And inside of this function, we would then have to call this function and pass in the parameters. And you can do like, you can iterate through a whole column if you want to do that. And you notice you're going to need the DUNS number here. So the thing with DNB is you always need the DUNS number. So that being said, it's like, well, that's great, but how do I get the DUNS number? So this is kind of interesting. And again, I'll just be transparent. This is some work that I did with them. So I said, hey, let's make it really easy for people to get DUNS numbers. And so what this is a little, if you've never seen this before, I'm on Insert, and this is Office apps. So the idea of this is like apps for Office that are like apps for your phone, okay? And there's a whole bunch of them, by the way, and a lot of them are free, and some of them are really, like this is an aside, but this is Bubbles, like all these cool visualizations. Before you go out and learn D3 and all that stuff, go and find all your visualizations for Excel. But anyway, so I'm in my business verification, and this is kind of smunched, so let me see what this does here. So basically what we're doing here is we have 3 steps to use this app. And let me see if I can get, it's really want to be smunched. So hopefully it will go. Yeah, okay, download the template. So what we said was, for the DNB case, for the premium data, people really just need the DUNS numbers. And plus, have you guys ever run into this where you just need DUNS numbers for billing? I know there's some government people here, so sometimes you need that. So inside of here, you got a template, and you can see in this template, I opened it for editing, and now let me just get rid of this little thing here. And in here, I've got 7 records. And I've got a record ID, I've got a company name, street address, city, state, zip code, phone, and then it's filled out to show you what you get. So you get a DUNS number, you'll see if it's matched or not, the confidence code, and then this is, I call it the knobs and widget. This is the match grade. And this is one of the differentiators when you're doing premium data, you guys. You want to ask your vendor about what are the adjustments you can make to their matching algorithm. Because what's happening is you're sending your data off, and then they're having their own fuzzy logic matching algorithm to match and complete the data. And what this literally means is like A is the business name has to be an exact match. F means the city has to be a fuzzy match. And I know this seems very like down in the weeds, but it's really important in terms of what you're paying for. Because again, if you don't tune this, you can get data back that you don't need. Does that make sense? Now, in the case of like a Melissa, I never use this. But the way I look at this is Melissa is sort of a down and dirty, just give me an ad, are my email addresses correct? Fine, yes or no. In the case of a D&B, I say, I want to have like the CEOs of the company and all the company names and all this stuff. So I want to have a very fine level of granularity, and I'm willing to pay for that because I'm going to be, calling the CFOs of all the companies. But I want to tune my match grade. So that's a big tip I have for you. Asking your premium vendors about how you tune the algorithm. So that being said, let me actually show you how this thing works. So let me just close this out, or clean this out, basically. So I'm going to say clear contents, and then I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to get rid of these records, because that's the identifier, and clear contents. The add-in is free. You get some records that you can try out for free with this, but if you go beyond your free records, then you pay to get this information. And just to show you that this is a real thing, we have a couple things in here. We have this is going to be an error because there's no country. That's on purpose. And then this one, oh, and I'm also going to take out all the street addresses because that's not required, and that's information that you're going to be getting back. And I'm going to take out the zip codes because you just need state and country. And this, and I'm going to take this out. And I'm going to take out the phone numbers because, again, that's what you're getting back. So you'd put in your data here, basically. And then I'm going to change one of these and put in my consulting business because I have a DUNS number and I have an address. So I have to put California. Okay. Now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to say insert and here and business verification. And now I'm going to sign in and check it out. See where I'm signing into? This is the front end for the Azure Marketplace, you guys. So you don't have to go there through your Excel tools. And so now I'm signed in. And it's going to say, hey, did you buy this? Yep, I have 100 transactions. And then notice you start paying for it here. And then I'm going to allow access to my Excel add-in here. And then I'm going to run my verification. And it's going to come back really fast because I have wired internet. Ha ha ha. I'm teasing you guys. And it will fill in all the information and give me DUNS numbers. And it'll be one error because this one does not have a country code. And let me just close this. And you can see it filled in all the information. There's my phone number. Don't call me. No, I'm kidding. I'm just joking. And matched. And here's my DUNS number. And there's the stuff. So this is, and the reason I show this is because directionally, this is where the stuff's going. And it's not all this sort of quick and smooth and easy. Like I started with the horror of, graph data and RDF and all those browser-based query languages. But really, vendors are starting to understand if they want to actually sell this data, they have to integrate it with the tools. Another point of integration for, because I happen to know D&B, if any of you guys use Sugar CRM, they actually won Partner of the Year with Sugar to help clean data because it's integrated. So this is a huge trend, thank goodness, that's coming into our world because aren't we all sick of data quality issues? Don't we need some help? So even though I kind of scared you on purpose with all this public data, one of the things that I think is really important is to really, really know what your tooling supports because there's going to be more and more of this support for integration of these vendors. And then the second point, of course, is which vendors are supported, right? So, and what do these various offers do for you? How do they relate back to the business question? Now, because I know I have a lot of financial people in here, I wanted to show another example of excellence in premium data. And this example is very much around financial information. So, but that has a lot of relevance to a lot of businesses, even if you're not, financial or stock trader or whatever. The guy who runs it is a former financial trader in New York, and it's called Quandl. And I think it's just easier to demonstrate. It's kind of like the Microsoft Azure Marketplace, but frankly, I think of a higher quality, more usable. And it's really fun. So you go out and they have free data sets, they have premium data sets, and they have freemium, so you can try it, right? So I think of it as kind of like a Google for data sets. And just beautiful interface, really easy to use. I'll just show it to you. So inside of here, I'm just going to put US crime rate because, I don't know, I know it returns an interesting data set. And search. And they give you little highlights. of what it works with, and like here's premium. Like you can see they have all these stock and bond prices in here. And then it's going to show you kind of like the Azure Marketplace thing, that browser you can work with. And notice that these nice filters over here, all free, premium, where it came from. You want the FBI crime data, you want Canada, whatever it is. So I'm going to go in here, the crime rate. And I just find this to be so usable. So a couple things. First of all, I use the data here. It's just everything I would want to know. I want to know where it came from. I want to know when it was refreshed. I want to know all these things. Like if you have to do data lineage, I want to know where it came from. If I want to, look at it a little bit more for the population, how are cars getting stolen? I want to favorite it. I want to download it. I want to see the data table behind it. I mean, it's literally, this guy is you, isn't it? It's like this is exactly the kind of thing you want in your job. If you want to program against it, I want to program against it in R because I use R. There I can use R. I want to program against it using JSON. I want to make a JSON call. I want to use Excel. Oh, fantastic. Let me show you. This guy's so smart. He's a super nice guy too, by the way. If you tweet about Quandle, the CEO guy will send you an email, and it's a personal email, and he will ask you how you used it and how he can make it better. He's such a cool guy, and he does the stuff you say. So anyway, so here's the add-in for Quandle. I should actually make a new page, which is, again, conceptually similar to what we had with D&B, but this combines all the freemium and everything else. So if I go search, and I say US crime rate, now I'm inside of Excel, which, again, is a great place to be. It's a great place when you're trying to do these data experiments. And here's the US crime rate. And then I just insert this code and close. And then it's weird, I have to click on it. That's the one little weird thing. And then I'm going to download it. And now I have it inside of Excel. Seriously, I lost, I think, a weekend when I discovered this thing. We're all data people. You know what I did, right? I was just playing around. It's beautiful. It's simple. It's easy. You can do favorites, preferences. But this idea of Googling for data is really starting to, come of age. And not only should you think about it for getting data, but again, if you're ever going to commercialize your data, you should think about how am I going to index my data? How am I going to make my data, available? So right here, I love the way he has this organized. You know how I was talking about open data? I was kind of fibbing in the beginning when I showed the Amsterdam Museum data. I'd never go there. I'd go to Quandle, because I love Quandle. And I would go to Quandle for open data to see about my Amsterdam Museum data, because I want that little visualizer thing. I don't want that DBpedia graph thing. I don't want to see that. Premium data, check it out. Sell your data. Something you probably never thought about, maybe even before today. How can you, as analysts, enrich the data that you're working with so your company can sell it in some way? Data as an asset. All right. So integration, I think Microsoft's really doing the best job. They're not the only ones. If you happen to be a Google Sheets user, Google Sheets is starting to do some integration. I did a D&B thing for them, and Amazon's paying attention. I'll just put it that way, so I don't have to break NDAs. There's lots with SQL Server, and I think SQL Server will revisit data quality services, which I'm not going to demo here. It's a fine service that Microsoft bought that really didn't just take hold. I think it was before its time. But I think they're going to be revisiting their whole master data management story going forward as a differentiator. So pay attention to the integration. Right now, SSIS is the big point. All right, so I showed that. So really, the takeaways here are that you always want to start with the business question. I mean, yes, it's fun to just play with data for data's sake. But as I did with the Oyster Cart people ultimately ended up, it's obviously a made-up story, but they would, if I were advising them, if they had a chain of Oyster Carts all over Amsterdam, I would advise them to start with that open data and to figure out strategically how they could place, position, open, stock their carts so they could make more money. Start with your public data. If you're really kind of an adventurer out there, you can go to the open data resources. But if you don't have time or inclination, you can search within Excel, like I showed you. Try that premium data before you buy it. and make sure you understand the tuning algorithms, especially the higher price data, like the D&Bs of the world, so that you only get the data that you actually need. Leverage the vendor integration and leverage the fact that it's a new category and be really tough on your vendors. Make them give you lots of samples. Make them give you, if you're going to produce integration, some developer talent as well. Because, all these guys are coming into the new world. There's the D&Bs and the Melissas, but there's also, and I guess I'll just show you this because, again, you're Microsoft audience. Inside of Azure, because I should actually show that, Azure portal. And hopefully, again, you'll be leveraging all your Azure credits so you can try this out. They're moving these services inside of Azure from the Azure Marketplace. So, I tell you, every analyst needs to have at least one cloud account, and you can quote me on that. If you do not, you are at a competitive disadvantage. If you're sitting there waiting for your DevOps people to do your queries and all that good stuff. Okay, so where in here is... I'm looking for the, I guess just click new. New data services, marketplace, okay. So it's the marketplace, and you can see here's Melissa integrated. And if I just go to data, it's going to bring it down. I have everything from address checking to here's D&B, company demographics, to machine learning stuff, anomaly detection. So again, the new world of premium data is not only the data, but also integration with machine learning. But that's a topic for another talk. Anywho, all right. Last thing before I jump off. So that's pretty much the meat of my talk, but I want to just talk for 5 minutes about the kid stuff that I'm doing because we have integration with this as well. So as I mentioned in the beginning, I am the co-founder of a nonprofit to teach children to program. And we launched at this conference our IoT and data science initiative, which we're starting with one set of summer camp programs. But we are, and I'll be very honest, we are aggressively seeking funding from all the major players out there, and we have proposals into Google, Microsoft, and Amazon. And if we get funding, crush fingers, then we will be working with more data science for kids. It's our dream to have a full first-year curriculum of data science for middle school kids, and that would include working with open data. So, call out to you. If any of you are interested in participating in helping us to build that, please let me know. My email is lynnlangit@live.com. And I think that it would be a fun thing to do as a working analyst, to teach myself by helping to build the courseware for the next generation. The last thing I'll say is I'll put a plug out to another organization in case you are wanting to more work with adults. There's an organization called DataKind, datakind.org actually, that has chapters worldwide, and they have this idea of data for good, free and open data for good. So I don't really care how you guys get involved, but this idea of data for good, whether we're teaching our kids or whether we're using the data that we now have available to help us have better lives by getting more information about our cities and governments, I really encourage you. It's a fantastic way for you to become more marketable and valuable, enjoy your job more, and be happier because you're doing good for the world. So these DataKind groups, they have chapters across the world, but they're also looking for remote volunteers. So you can work remotely on data projects. So whether it's with my organization or with DataKind or something else with Data for Good, there's more up in the valley here. That's a fantastic way to get into this new world of premium data and free data without, in addition to what you do at work. So anyway, so with that, I'm going to go back over here and give you my contact information. And thank you for coming. Thank you very much. Thank you.